Hey, AP students, we're continuing our conversation on measuring the economy today. We're getting into unemployment. Okay, so the notes that you want, you're continuing these. Okay, we're on the unemployment side. Obviously, remember where something is in green, right? That's telling you where to write it. So, and then you're going to write down what's in red. So, anyway, that's where we're headed. Eventually, we will get to uh, these notes here. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But let's kind of talk about this unemployment stuff as we keep you know keeping in mind what this macroeconomic stuff's all about. Okay, so I start you out here with a blog. It's asking you which people are considered unemployed. We're going to come back to that. Just kind of maybe take a look at it here real quick and take a guess when we come back to it. But it's going to make a lot more sense here in a second. We talked about the relationship between unemployment and inflation. That's going to come up a whole lot more. Remember, unemployment is isn't necessarily looked at as how many people don't have jobs. It's going to be looked at as how many people don't have incomes. Okay, so when I'm employed, that means that I have an income, right? That means I'm spending money. And as unemployment goes down, this blue line right here, we see inflation increase. Okay, so as unemployment goes down, demand increases, we spend money, prices go up. Remember that relationship between those two as we kind of move forward. So a couple special terms for you. Okay, we're going to define people in one of three ways here. Okay, employed, unemployed, or not in the labor force. Okay, so um, we'll talk about each of those people here in a little bit. Uh, Employed people have to work for only 1 hour. Okay, we'll talk about inaccuracies later on. That's going to be one of those inaccuracies that occur because that's how our government is going to define someone as unemployed or someone as employed. Sorry. Okay, unemployed. The big key is I've got to actively be looking for work. Okay, I've got to actively be looking for a job, and then that means putting in applications, those types of things, not just necessarily saying, well, I wish I could work, but I've got to be looking. Okay. And then we're going to take some people out of the mix altogether. They're going to be considered not in the labor force. Okay. One term that you might see pop up is what's referred to as the natural rate of unemployment. That concept basically refers to the fact that we're always going to have some unemployment. Okay, and once I decide to enter the labor force, whether it's graduating college or high school or whatever, once I decide to put an application in, I'm officially unemployed. Okay, by the definition, and so there's always going to be some unemployed people. On top of that, there's going to be people quitting jobs and looking for a new job, and so we're always going to have some level of unemployment. It's probably considered a good thing in the grand scheme of talking about economics. We want people to have confidence to try to go do something new or do something better, right? To try to better themselves financially or better themselves, mentally. I guess too is there's more reasons than money to do a job. So we're going to consider this a good thing. Again, it's in the United States. It's probably somewhere in the range of like 2 to 4%, sometimes 5%, kind of depending on how the economy is doing. And again, it's not. It's just a situation where we're never going to reach 0% unemployment. Okay, so to go back to kind of use this definition of again being unemployed, I'm asking you who is considered unemployed. Remember, I've got to actively be looking for work. Stay at home moms, as far as we know in this case, not actively looking for work. Retired people, not actively looking for work. The construction worker worked for 15 hours, not 40 or 35, but 15 hours. They're not unemployed. Father of three, waiting to hear back. That would be unemployed. 19-year-old just graduated. Well, it depends if they're looking for work. I don't give you that information in there. Second grade student. We'll find out later that we don't count people under 16 years old, but obviously we also know that they're not looking for a job. Letter G, kind of tricky. Drug dealer who doesn't have another job. They're probably not going to tell the government that they have a job being a drug dealer. So, and they're probably not going to say that they're looking for a job either. Okay. So, but if they did, they could be considered unemployed if they were looking for a job. Teachers during the summer. If I'm looking for a job, I could be considered unemployed. A disabled worker, not looking for a job. Okay. And then the trickiest one is somebody that looks for work for a period of time but gave up. Okay, they're not looking for work anymore. They're off the list. We're going to have a special term for them. It's called discouraged workers. We'll define them a little bit later. Okay, so again, the big key is, am I actively looking for work to be considered unemployed? Okay, so to figure out this unemployment rate, it's a pretty simple formula. We're going to take the number of unemployed. We're going to divide it by the labor force. So we got to multiply it by 100 to get that to a percentage, right? We can also see the labor force participation rate, the labor force divided by the population. We're going to look at that here in a little bit too, because it tells us a little bit more of a story. Rather than just the statistic, as we look at the statistic and realize it's not perfect, much like we talked about with inflation and GDP eventually. So why is unemployment important? I kind of mentioned it. It shows us our income. Okay, if we want to talk about efficiency of the economy, our economy is not as efficient as it could be if we have 10% unemployment. We're not using all of our resources, right? And again, most importantly, probably when we tie it in with these other statistics, is it's telling us how many people are earning an income. Okay, not a perfect statistic to show how much money people are earning, but it does show us that people are earning an income, and we're going to tie that into GDP eventually. We've already done that with inflation. Um, let's do a few of these unemployment problems here. Okay, let me tie back in here real quick before, just to remind us that when we have these recessions in the gray bars, unemployment goes up, right? Unemployment crawls back when we are in a period of growth. And you can kind of see that. We mentioned that in the first video. If you need a review on that, go ahead and review that. Okay, let's talk about this equation here. We'll do the first one together, and then I'll kind of cut you loose and or I'll give you a second to do the other ones. Okay, so remember, our equation is unemployed divided by the labor force. Here's the tricky part, okay, is employed and unemployed are the labor force. Okay, so I've got to add those two together. Okay, and I've got to remember to do that. And they like to try to trick you on the test and, just give you the number of people that are unemployed. And a lot of people give me the answer unemployed divided by employed. That's a ratio. We don't want a ratio, we want a percentage. So right now we've got 40,000 people actively looking for work. Okay, these are our unemployed people, right? So we got unemployed. That's our numerator. We've got 4,000 here. All right, that's our numerator. Now we've got to figure out the denominator, which is the labor force, right? So our labor force, these are people that are employed, right? Well, we've got to add these two together. All right, 31,000 plus 4,000 is 35,000. We're going to multiply that by 100. Okay, do the math real quick. That's going to give us 11.4%. Remember that number. We're going to reference that here in a little bit. Labor force participation rate. Okay, that's our labor force. Right? We have that number already, okay? Divided by population. Okay, so for here, we've got 35,000 people in the labor force, divided by 50,000. We'll multiply that by 100 as well. Do the math real quick. That's going to be 70%. Okay, we'll remember that number here in a second as well. Okay, now, some things happen, if you can understand the statistic here, some things happen that are probably a little bit unexpected. Okay, so sometimes people are unemployed for so long that they give up. This happened in 2009. It's probably happening a little bit in 2020 and 2021 with this COVID stuff. But people give up looking for jobs. So whether they feel like they can't work, maybe they decide, you know what, I could work, but I'm going to decide to retire instead. There's a few different reasons we would quit looking for a job. You might go back to school even, okay, and delay working. So anyway, we're going to say that 1,000 people in this country give up looking for a job. Well, that's going to change our unemployment rate. Our unemployment is now 3,000. Okay, I'm going to rewrite that. I apologize. Okay, well, this also affects our labor force because we had 1,000 people completely leave. Remember, they're not actively looking for work anymore. So now we've got 34,000 people in the labor force. By that by 100. Now, keep in mind, this economy is probably not doing very good because people gave up, right? I don't want to work. It's not worth my time. It's not doing well. Well, if you do this math here real quick, you can see that this unemployment rate actually comes out to 8.8%. Remember, this is the exact same economy over here where we had 11.4%. Well, people gave up, right? The economy's bad. Well, our unemployment rate actually decreases if we do the math that way. So it doesn't always tell us the whole story. It changes our labor force participation rate. 34,000 divided by 50,000. That's going to equal 68%. Okay, as you're kind of doing the math there, taking a shot at those things. So our labor force participation rate actually went down. Okay, um, but again, just some statistics that you want to be able to be familiar with as they are accurate or inaccurate. Now let's flip it. Okay, so going back to our original, let's say that the economy is doing so well that people actually want to come to work. And so maybe they were a stay-at-home parent. Maybe they were like discouraged in the first place, and didn't really feel like working for whatever reason. Now we have 1,000 people that come and apply for jobs from our original problem. So our unemployment is now 5,000, and our labor force participation is now 36,000. Well, if you do the math there, you'll see that gives us an unemployment rate of 13.8%. Okay, I'm rounding off. I think it's 13.88. Okay, so anyway, our unemployment goes up. The economy is doing real well. People want to work. They're going to look for jobs, but our unemployment rate gets worse. Labor force participation is also going to go up in this case. Again, we've done this a couple times. Simple math. You'll get plenty of practice as we kind of move forward here. That's going to be 72%. Okay, so that's one of the inaccuracies. They're referred to as discouraged workers. Some ways that things aren't necessarily as accurate as they may seem. Okay, so some things that cause it. At the end of the day, it's probably going to be probably going to be caused by some type of a lower demand for products. Okay, so just to kind of simply set this up on a supply and demand graph. Remember, we're the suppliers of labor. Okay, so we are the supply people, right? So if for whatever reason, and this price axis is going to also be referred to as wage, okay, as we continue to talk about this. Well, if we lowered our demand for products, so whatever our quantity is, however many people we want to have hired, okay, let's just call it 1 million, okay? Well, if we have a lowered demand for products, we see the quantity of labor demanded is going to go down, right? So, I mean, let's just call that 800,000. Okay. So if we shift our demand to the left, our quantity goes down. On top of that, too, what else happens? I'll redraw my graph here. Is if let's say, for example, that we increase the cost of production. Okay. And so maybe even like something like increasing minimum wage. All right. Well, that's going to increase the cost of production. We're going to decrease the supply there, right, of how much we're producing. Well, now our quantity of labor decreases again. So some of those things can cause a decrease to, or how much labor is needed for whatever reason, right? People stop buying stuff. Maybe the cost of labor gets too high, and I want to build a machine instead. Different things can cause different shifts in those curves. We mentioned some things as we kind of went through. Make sure you get these written down. Discouraged workers. Okay, those are the people that quit looking for jobs. Some inaccuracies if we have a lot of informal or illegal work going on where people are earning an income but they don't say they have a job. Um, Drug dealers are the best example of an illegal job, I guess you could say. And then, informal jobs where people, might want to do something and not tell the government because they don't want to pay taxes. If you've ever babysat before, and especially if you babysit often, I guess, and you don't pay taxes on that, then the government doesn't know that you're employed, so to speak. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to pay taxes. You got to make more than $800, I think. So the number off the top of my head, it might be a little bit more. You got to make more than $800 to really put yourself into a situation where you'd get into trouble. But anyway, those informal jobs where people can get paid in cash and not tell anybody, though they're employed, but they're going to be counted as unemployed or not part of the labor force. All right, and then we have some things too that I may not be losing my job. However, maybe I got my hours cut. 2009, this happened a lot. Okay, where I was working 40 hours last month. This month I'm working 20 hours. My employment is still there. The unemployment rate may not change because of me, but my income's way lower. And remember, we said that we're worried about income more than we're worried about people having jobs. Like the income part of it is what's important as in terms of what we're analyzing. Okay, so it's not super accurate, but it does give us a quick snapshot into some things that are happening as we analyze the economy as a whole. All right. So just some specific things. People aren't working, not able to buy goods and services. We don't pay taxes as much. We don't have our income taxed because we're not earning an income. And it's also a double negative for the government. We're not talking about government payments yet or anything like that. But in the future, when people lose their job, our government takes care of them. They give them income called unemployment insurance. And obviously, it's a double negative. Not paying taxes, increased payments to people that don't have jobs. It becomes extremely expensive for our government. And our government faces some challenges with their debt right now. We'll talk about that in a different chapter. All right. As you kind of finish things off here, uh, notice on these other part of your notes, I filled out a lot of them for you. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on it. But there are a few different ways that you want to know how people become unemployed. Okay. So you've got the people that become frictional unemployed. And here's how I remember. Okay. Frictional unemployment is kind of choosing to look for a new job. Okay. So the way I remember it, and that could mean I got fired. That can mean that I quit. That can mean that basically if I finish high school and I go apply for my first job or college, I'm frictionally unemployed until I get hired. Okay. Now the way I remember it is I say that okay, if you have friction with your boss or friction with your income situation, so I graduate, I'm not earning any money, I've got to go find a job, right? Or whatever reason. I don't like my job. I want to make more money, so I quit. I don't like my boss. I have friction with that situation, so I go and apply for a job somewhere else. Right? Remember though, I have to be unemployed. Okay, I can't say, "Oh, I hate my job. I'm going to go apply somewhere else." I've got to be unemployed to be considered unemployed. Okay, I can't have a job and look for another one. That's not unemployed. Okay, so that's how I remember it with that analogy. Structural employment, another tricky one to remember. This is when technology replaces me. Okay, and so the way I remember is that a structure is built that replaces me. Keep in mind, like that structure word is used loosely, right? Like the internet can be considered a structure. So you have like travel agents. Like I don't have to hire a travel agent anymore. I'm going to go online and book all my stuff, through the internet. It's going to walk me through all that stuff. So that's how I remember that. Okay. And obviously, the obvious structure that's built is like a robot, right? So, anyway, that's how I remember seasonal unemployment. That's when I'm unemployed in a certain season. So, if you work at, let's say, an ice cream place during the summer, well, during the wintertime, they usually close. Keep in mind, you've got to be looking for another job during the winter. Okay. If you just work in the summer and you're not looking for a job in the winter, you're not going to be considered unemployed. Okay, you're simply just don't, you're out of the labor force, right? So seasons happen when seasons change. There's lots of examples out those with that. Cyclical unemployment has to do with the business cycles. Okay, and this is the dangerous one where the business is going out of business. I can't hire you anymore. We don't have enough work. I'm gonna send you home. I'm gonna lay you off. Okay, so now you don't have a job because there is no work out there. Okay, that is cyclical unemployment. That's the dangerous one. Those are those unpredictable cycles. I would say COVID would be an example of one of those unpredictable cycles that caused some people to lose their jobs for, well, some people an extended period of time. Okay, but happens in when demand goes down and businesses start closing. That's the example of cyclical. Okay, so anyway, the last thing you want to write down is down here. Okay, just kind of a quick reminder so they're in front of your face. Are the things that aren't included in these statistics. I have them listed here for you. Okay, you can write down what's in red. We've kind of mentioned them as we've gone through. Maybe the one I didn't mention is the military. Okay, we don't include the military people for whatever reason. That's just the statistic that the government gives us. Again, we're just trying to get as accurate of a picture of the unemployment rate as possible. So someone decided that the military is going to lead to some inaccuracy, so they leave the military out of it. All right. I think you have everything else. I think that's good. That's it for today for unemployment. Our next talk is going to be about GDP. But again, the important part about this unit is understanding how we figure out these stats. What do we use them for? How do they relate to each other? We'll talk soon.